Today, KPRC2 is committed to a full day of breaking free stories. It's our initiative to combat domestic violence and help victims. Here to talk about the state of domestic violence in the Houston area is trauma therapist Chau Nguyen. Chau, good morning. Thank you so much, as always, for coming on the show. We appreciate your time.
Good to see you, Zach.
Hey, so I want to ask you, looking at last fall into the holidays and, of course, winter months, the cases we covered and continue to follow seem to be more violent in nature. Now, if you look back to the pandemic, that is when we saw an uptick in domestic violence at that time, and we thought it was because people were cooped up inside and with one another for so long. Do we have any indication on what's behind the recent spike that we saw through the fall into the winter months?
Well, you're absolutely right, Zach. Those months in 2020 did precipitate what we saw as advocates and those who work in community-based organizations dealing with domestic violence, that the severity of violence seemed to be more pervasive. And that severity seems to continue. As a trauma therapist working at the Forensic Center of Excellence, I see a lot of clients who come in with severe physical injuries, emotional injuries. It's the things that sometimes you don't even see in the news. Why the severity? Those stressors still continue. Financial stressors, addiction, things in the home, poverty. Those seem to be, I'm so sorry, those seem to escalate violence, but we are seeing it. And there seems to be a sort of a desensitization in our communities when it comes to domestic violence.
Yeah, and then of course these issues go hand in hand. They become cyclical. One commonality in recent intimate partner violence situations seem to be tracking devices. How do you advise your clients on this particular topic?
You know, technology abuse is something that we as advocates have been looking at for quite some time now, and that includes tracking your car through GPS, installing spyware. You have no idea that they're tracking your emails and your every move on your computers. You know, those air tags have been seen in shoes of children and those kinds of things. Typically, when we talk to survivors, they sense something's going on. They feel like they're watched. And I always say, if you sense something, then there is probably something behind it. If something doesn't feel right, go check it out. Go talk to a community-based organization. Call the police. There are police organizations who can help you determine whether or not you're being tracked. And I say ditch the devices. If you're heading to a shelter and you're looking for a shelter, it might be a good idea to leave those devices at home because they can be tracking your every move and it's dangerous. And then finally, we're looking at things like social media. Social media can be a big contribution to that control and power that perpetrators often put over their victims. And so they're looking at who's DMing them, at what they're posting. These things are all very, very dangerous. And if a survivor decides to leave, she or he needs to know what actions to take. And part of that action is seeking support and help from professionals who can help you.
Yeah, all good information. Chau, I do have a question for you about sharing your location. This morning during this broadcast, our reporter Rochelle Turner focused on teen violence, and she had information that she shared with us. 1 in 12 teens experience physical or sexual violence. It was during her report we learned teens are sharing their locations with their partners. In your professional opinion, is this appropriate?
You know, it's appropriate when the relationship is healthy. So we have to take a step back. Are there healthy behaviors in the relationship? Because the idea of sharing location can be a control tactic, especially among young people. And it can be very dangerous, right? On social media, they share it on Snapchat. And then there's an issue of human trafficking as an aside to sexual violence. But it can be very dangerous. And I've seen clients who have shared and it becomes a disaster because then it leads to stalking, it leads to where you are. My suggestion, first of all, you should not be sharing if you're a teenager. Your parents should be knowing where you're going, not your boyfriend and your girlfriend.
Yeah, absolutely. Tonight at 6, we have a report on funding for nonprofits being slashed by a third in 2025. For those who need help, who are going to be able to seek that care? Will they be able to get care, the care they need come next year?
You know, nonprofit organizations like the Forensic Center of Excellence, where I work, come up with creative ways to support clients at all costs. But looking at funding cuts can be very devastating. I mean, there are so many needs survivors have. There are not enough beds in our community to house them. Hotlines are lit up all hours of the night. So funding cuts have a deleterious effect on survivors. And yes, I always believe that nonprofits can come up with creative ways to support survivors, but it is a community-wide effort. It starts with our community. Church organizations step in. But when you look at funding cuts, and we're already so desperately in need of things like shelter and housing and just basic needs to ensure that survivors can live their lives free of violence, it's devastating and it's a real concern. And nobody wants to see another spike in domestic violence reports because they're already spiking. I mean, we look at things like police reports, but did you know that more than half of all survivors don't even go to the police because of fear of their perpetrator, or fear that, you know, he's the breadwinner, and it's complicated, or they're providing for their children. They don't want to go to the police. They just want the violence to end. So a lot of the cases that we hear about are not even reported because they're not reported to police.
Yeah, these crimes being underreported is a big problem. As you mentioned, they're very complicated in so many layers. Chau, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.